Shruti Ghandi from Array Ventures, and
Dave.
multi-talented Dave Rosenberg, who was a journalist and who is now a VC with GE Ventures. And I'm going to hand it over to Dave.
All right. Ooh. Hey.
We're going to run until 8 o'clock. It's being streamed on the Facebook page, but that 8 o'clock will include Q&A. So will I leave it to you to time that?
I will do my best. I forgot my watch.
Thanks, Dave.
Yes, so I will trust somebody else here. I assume somebody has, how many Apple Watches, right? That's the joke. Yeah. Good. Well, thanks, everybody. We'll introduce our wonderful panel here. Let's start with Shruti. And since we have a big contingent of Swiss students here, and as such, I feel like they should have to pick their favorite Swiss band. And I'll give you some options, or you could just pick your favorite Swiss band. I come from, you have Celtic Frost, Hellhammer, Yellow, and Shakira.
Really?
I made that up. Yeah.
I'll go with Shakira anyway.
Okay, Shakira. And so Shruti, give us a quick minute on yourself. Thanks to the magic of the internet, my next door neighbor is texting me, asking me if I can kill some spiders for her when I get home. The answer is no.
What?
Yeah, it really is true. City living, people are terrified of spiders.
Yeah, I was saying, MZ, part of the venture team at Kleiner, spend most of my time between both our consumer and enterprise working group. Don't look at everything on the enterprise side, nor do I look at everything on the consumer side. Kind of look at everything above the infrastructure stack on the enterprise side. And on the consumer side, it's more like network effect businesses. About 7 years ago, started a company in the developer tool space. Was building a JavaScript error detection solution, went through YC for it. And then thereafter, was really bad at running companies and was like, what can I be good at? And still not sure if I'm good at it, but went over to doing a bunch of seed investing for about 2.5 years, mostly on the consumer side. And then along the way, I actually started investing a lot in machine intelligence, companies in the machine intelligence space. And so kind of, I guess, a natural fit here.
Yeah, excellent. Any factoids about Switzerland that you know off the top of your head?
Good skiing.
Weak.
Week.
More than 1,500 lakes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. See? Anybody? Nobody? And I am Dave. I am with GE Ventures. I spent a bunch of time as an entrepreneur prior to that, and I spent about 4 years with another venture fund prior to joining GE back in November. And before that, I did write a lot. It is true. I wrote for CNET for years and InfoWorld and Bloomberg and everything else that you could. I used to be able to type like one of those 40s typists like in a movie, but I lost that skill. So we're talking about AI and big data, for lack of better terms, and there are a lot of buzzwords. You got a favorite?
Machine intelligence.
Yeah, that's a good one. Shruti?
Learning.
Deep learning. I'm going to go with data lake. I feel like that's a good one. What era? How dare you, man? Well, I think this leads to the first question, which is, have you actually seen any of these things in real life?
I've seen a lake full of data.
Yeah. But you've not seen a data lake. So, I mean, are you seeing machine intelligence? Where is that?
What does that mean?
Intelligent machines. I think machine intelligence to me is sort of, it's like a catch-all word. It's basically sort of buzzwords for all buzzwords.
Okay.
That's sort of how I interpret it. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, I'm going to make the assumption that we generally know what AI and big data are. If we don't, then you guys might go to the room next door. No, we. So let's as Shruti mocks me for being old. One of the big things that I think we see when we talk about big data is that there's a lot of it, and generally speaking, people don't know what to do with it. And so, where are you looking at investment aspects? Or is tooling interesting? Is it use cases? What do you think is the way to go?
So, yeah, I did my. Is my mic on? Okay. I did my master's thesis in data in 2000 era, and then we were doing a little bit of AI work at the time, but it wasn't as big. But it has now become a buzzword. The reason it is every company that comes pitches to you is doing something with AI. And then when you dig deeper, they're leveraging AI platforms. They may not be doing something on their own with AI. So what has become the focus for Array has been twofold. One is we like to understand what are you doing on the back end, like to enable the trend, what we call data science and AI and machine intelligence and so forth? Because no data scientist wants to touch data that's not clean. It's like garbage in, garbage out. So what at Array we like to invest in things that we call plumbing to make all this happen. And then the second category is application of this data for different verticals. And what we will do is create a thesis on verticals like logistics or marketing or commerce, and then we will see what white space or opportunities there are to go and then fund a company in that category that's leveraging data to solve problems for that category.
So you're going sort of arms dealer approach, right? You're giving
What
the
does the arms
tools.
dealer do?
The arms dealer gives you something to go, do some damage with in many cases.
Oh,
So
cool.
you're funding tools and things of that nature rather than use cases right now. Is that sort of where you're at?
Use cases, but it is use case, but it is more of a I need this use case in this vertical that is so big that it can be a company and not a feature.
Got it.
But yeah.
Okay. And how about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to backtrack a bit.
Please.
I think on my end, sort of, I view sort of this notion of like artificial intelligence as sort of like an enabling technology, and sort of my interests are far more. I'm far more interested in investing in sort of businesses that can sort of leverage this technology rather than sort of like a horizontal application around this. It's just tough to sort of build horizontally oriented business, like building like AI as a service. It's like a tough business.
So you're saying you're not going tools, in fact.
No, I think.
So Shruti will fund the companies that
Yeah.
your companies will then consume.
No, I think.
No,
I
I
think.
don't think I said
I don't- I
I
think-
said vertical as well.
Yeah, I think I think tooling can work if the tooling becomes a core part of your infrastructure, right? Like you can use storage is, for instance, like tooling, right? But I would say sort of like a lot of the artificial intelligence is sort of it's really just models, and you need like data sets to kind of train those models, and then sort of once the models are trained and there's insights or sort of some aspect of automation in play, it's sort of like how's that applied, right? And so for me, it's a lot of it's sort of like the application of it, and the application of it could still be sort of kind of in the arms dealer sort of scenario, right? I think a lot of it, this is just kind of like very subjective, and it's like more nomenclature than anything else. But
Yeah, sadly it's not black and white yet. So
Yeah.
is there a vertical that you think is, super awesome, interesting?
The good part about the strategy we adopt is we will find a problem or vertical and then try to invest in 3 or 4 companies
Okay.
in that and then move on to the next one. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we're done with the first vertical. It just means that we keep learning and growing. But right now I'm pretty excited about health and finance, fintech.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good, for those of you who are the MBA students, it's a good to understand an event, your venture strategy is probably a little bit different than Kleiner's.
maybe. I mean, I'd like to think sort of you do seed and we do seed in some A's, and I think there's like kind of sort of a symbiotic sort of relationship. So I wouldn't say they're divergent at all. Yeah, I'd say like, I think for us it's sort of like like as I mentioned, sort of it's more of like the vertical application of the technology, but there's so many verticals out there, right? I think just to kind of pick on an example, a company in our portfolio is one that, is interesting is Ripcord, and they're more in the document management space.
Mm-hmm.
So say you're sort of like a Wilson Sonsini or any law firm, you have like a ton of paper records. And you need to manage that. And right now you might use it on Iron Mountain, or you might have some sort of ring box that goes off somewhere, right? Ripcord kind of does the scanning sort of in a robotic fashion. So it's sort of like document management with robotics, right? So it scans everything, you can get rid of the paper at some point, shred it, and then have it be searchable or indexable. And so that's sort of an interesting application, and it kind of solves a very specific use case, right? That's like pretty large.
And would you say that is do you guys classify that as an AI company, or is it is a use case oriented company using AI?
So my view is like I don't really know what it means to be an AI company. I think you use I think it's like saying like, hey, do you use like a programming language? Like
Yeah.
yeah, of course. Like we use programming languages to like build like sort of mobile products or like a web services, right? And then that could sort of be like a SaaS application. It could sort of be like like it could be like next generation CRM. It doesn't. I don't think of it in the sense, I don't really sort of digest a company as like an AI company.
Okay.
I think AI could be sort of its differentiated factor, right? It could be like, hey, we have the best technology compared to incumbents, or we want to go after an incumbent use case because we'll have better technology. There are companies that are AI companies, like DeepMind kind of encapsulated that for a while. You have things like kind of like Clarify that are AI companies, but they also tend to then naturally gravitate towards a use case over time, because if you're procuring software or buying software, you have to see some inherent value, or it either saving you money or generating more revenue for you, and then as a result, these end businesses can shave off basis points on that and make money.
There are 635 AI companies on CB Insights. So
Whatever that means.
yeah. No, this is how. But you're classifying these people are classifying themselves into something that has to be understood by the market. I think is sort of the point that. Who the hell knows what it means? I mean, we used to call a lot of this stuff back in the day, this was preferences, right? A lot of what AI is like gives me a preference at this point, because most of these models are only go so far. But we like to think that there's a big future there, right? So as we talk about the AI aspect of it, are there companies in your portfolio, and let's not go into a crazy portfolio pitch, that you think are really doing a great job of using data to, make their product better?
Mm-hmm. To MZ's point, that like Clarify is more horizontal, but there's a company in my portfolio called Mad Street Den, and they are they figured out how to use vision and the computer vision to help commerce, retail brands to auto-tag their products. So they have 12 products now that retailers and commerce companies use. And that's an application, it's a perfect example of like a company that is horizontal, like Clarify, versus Mad Street Den that went on with, I'm just going to use that tech for a vertical to solve that problem and then make money from that vertical. That doesn't mean they can't go to another vertical from there on. It just means that they found an opportunity where they can start making money right away. So that's a company that I'm pretty excited about. Obviously, all our babies are equal, so
they're all great.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Is there something that you think?
By the way, we're not picking on Clarify.
Yeah.
They're awesome. I like Matt a lot. I think Lux is an investor.
Sorry, yeah.
Lux is an investor.
Look,
Union Square also.
Everything is awesome.
Yeah. No, like seriously. Like
no,
Clarify. But for instance,
Exactly.
even my point was Clarify kind of started off as this like image recognition API. But then a lot of its use cases might be in real estate over time. And so you need to create your own bounding box and application and use case if you want to even start off horizontal.
That was exactly
I think you can be horizontal, but you have to find that initial sort of use case.
Revenue stream, right?
Or moat. Mentioned Ripcord, like, we're investors in DJI. And to your point, like, do you view that as an AI company? I think they actually, like, I view them as like kind of a robotic company and it obviously leverages AI techniques, right? So I'd say that's another one, right? Sort of like it's a drone company, but there's a lot of interesting vision at play. At the heart of it, we view it as a robotics company that builds, drones for consumers.
Yeah.
So.
One of the ones that we did not invest in, but I met recently was a company called Memetic, which I think is out of Singapore, out of one of the incubators, and they have an assistant that will book your schedule, whatever you want to have a meeting with Dave, whatever, and it's really good. And you can freak out your admin completely because they know people who don't know that they're talking to this. It's a bot, for lack of a better term, but it's pretty darn good.
Have you used XAI, Clara, all those other?
I've tried pretty much everything.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was just an interesting one where it actually worked. And
What do you
freaked
think they
somebody
do
out.
differently?
Well, I'm sorry?
What do they do differently?
I think it's mostly the natural language processing
It's better?
is better.
Do you know what they use under the hood?
I don't know, but it's a good thing. We should all go find out and invest in it. Or not, or figure out how to do it better. That's what we do here in the Valley for you Swiss who are visiting us so kindly. So we're at the quarter point here. So my question for the audience here is: do you guys want to keep going on AI and big data? Do you want more interesting on the venture side? My feelings, a little bit of venture stuff would be good for you. So I have some questions for that. No, we got plenty of time. I have some questions for that. Kleiner, old school, kind of gone new school a little bit. Old line, blue chip firm, and then sort of had a bit of a resurgence over the last, say, 5 years or so, getting into sort of more, I don't want to call them esoteric, but more newer companies, smaller things. Fair? Unfair? Whatever, no comment.
Your words.
Yeah, Shruti, well, you have a different model.
Yeah, different. Obviously, Kleiner's been around and more successful and then more data for all these years. Array started 2 years ago, so we're definitely different from the timing perspective.
But you have a different approach.
We're early stage, more pre-seed, seed, and Series A. Obviously, Kleiner does many stages. What way are we different, you think?
You have the network
think-
effect that you talk quite a
Yes.
bit about.
Sure.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what you're trying to get to, but I'm happy to talk
Whatever
about it.
feels good to you. It feels
Cool.
works good to
Awesome.
me. Yeah.
It's hard when you pitch us against each other like
I'm
this,
not. You guys are best friends. Everything is awesome. Why is it, everything is great. It's a push-up contest after this.
But Array was founded under a few go-to-market differentiation for enterprise companies. So the first thing is the consumerization of enterprise is a real trend where there is this behavior which I personally call it the agitated workforce, which means you and I are all on Facebook and Twitter and all our products that we just use for fun, and then we go to work and we have to use the ZOS mainframes and maybe not that bad, but like even the new Workday and all of that is like 10, 15 years old. And so what happens is you're frustrated, you are agitated, and you end up wanting to use a replacement better software that can make your life better, more efficient, more productive. So then you go and search outside to use that product, and that's the birth of things like Slack and Twilio and things that you can maybe buy with your credit card or maybe convince your other team members to buy. So that's the thesis for Array, which inherently creates this sponsor which loves your product, goes and champions for it within the company without being asked for it. And that creates the network effects that we at Array look for. And that's focused on, that's our thesis for the fund.
And how about for you guys? Is there a...
So, I mean, I would say we're multi-stage in nature, and then, we have sort of folks that invest across sectors. So, we have sort of on the venture side, we invest in the enterprise. We have an enterprise group, we have a consumer working group, and then we have life sciences and digital health, as well as sort of like hard tech. So I'd say like, we invest across different disciplines. I just kind of second your statement. I do sort of believe in this notion of like bring your own service in the enterprise, like the consumerization of the enterprise is one that I'm like keenly following as well. And, I think to your point, sort of there's a lot of sort of software that might feel and look and feel new, but it's actually quite legacy in nature. And, there's, to your point, there's more of this bottoms-up network. You can apply basically the consumer playbook in the enterprise now to growth, and then over time, sort of there might be enough people putting their own credit cards down. Then procurement comes into play, and you kind of sandwich and sell in the traditional enterprise manner. But I mean, I'd say we invest across sectors, stages, both from a venture and growth lens, all the way from like seed to growth. So it just depends on who you talk to at the fund, and what everyone has their own interests and own. I would say I lean more heavy on the consumer side, and then I would look at things that are like the consumer, for lack of a better term, consumerization of the enterprise, or sort of enterprise sort of products that sort of keep in mind sort of like the end user, treat the end user as a consumer almost.
Okay.
So work with companies like BuddyBuild on the mobile CI/CD side, and then sort of spending some time with a company in our portfolio called Full Story, which is trying to build like the DVR of the web. So I'd say like most of my the investments I've worked on at Kleiner have been enterprise focused, but with a very strong sort of consumer sort of twist.
All right, we'll take a question from the audience if anybody has one. Nobody. Yes.
Yeah, when it comes to big data and AI, I hear and read a lot about biases that go into the product offering, and we're probably seeing some of that comes from the challenges that Facebook and Google are facing. For example, do you see any of that in your portfolio? Do you have any examples of how those kind of biases may be getting addressed?
So for the...
Generally, perspective on
Yes,
how the future of this technology looks like in terms of batteries.
Yeah, let me see if I can say that out for the camera. The question is around biases in the data sets, and so how does that get addressed? And maybe this is a good answer since you love this. A good one for you to respond
Sure.
to?
What do I love?
You love data.
Oh, okay, cool.
You're not seeing her card? She says, I love data,
I thought
right?
yeah, I love bias.
No, I'm sorry, yes, no.
Well, actually, funny enough, I was in a documentary last week talking about biases and AI affecting that. But my answer to that is bringing diversity in teams. It's the classic thing was when in the early 2000s when we were recording voices to train for speech to text or reverse. It was always they would ask people that they knew to record, and then what ended up becoming things that are like early versions of Siri, which when you have to talk to it, it's like, hi, hello, how are you? And so it's when you don't account for diversity, you don't account for ethnic data, and that is a result of your teams not being diverse, that is impacted by. So what I try to often do when I'm trying to invest in companies is look for diverse teams, and that diversity is many things, and it's not just women, it's not just particular minority groups or any of that. It's making sure everyone is representing different parts and different ethos to a company. So, yeah, that's one way I look at it.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that part if you don't mind. To the diversity in the valley in companies is an important topic, which we're not going to go too far on. But I think one of the ways to that. So I've actually looked a lot at these companies that are doing detailed training sets of how do I train data to be better. How do I sort of how do you use machine learning to keep making the training set smarter such that it gets better, and then you start to offset some of these things. It's a very, very difficult problem. You might use a data lake to store all the data. I'm kidding, making that up. That was for Shruti. But it's an interesting untapped area. I don't know if you guys have looked at that at all.
What specifically within sort of do you mean I mean, at the end of the day, I think sort of like your models and sort of your algorithms are sort of kind of like the efficacy of it is sort of largely dictated by the data you have, right?
I think it depends on the objective. For example, news feed, right? That's a big, controversial.
Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, sort of it's intelligence, but there's the tuning and sort of like the feature abstraction, and a lot of this is sort of happening by individuals, right? So in many ways, maybe you want have sort of like a, kind of a blind study or blind approach on how you train your models, and sort of have like sort of guardrails on that front. I don't know. I mean, these are specifically to the techniques, right?
Right.
Like,
right. Yeah. I mean, the goal is for the machine learning to get smarter on its own, right? And that's the whether or not we get there is it's an interesting question though, because if you look at it, when the use cases for a lot of this stuff right now are in some I will say that they are a little depressing. Things like advertising and newsfeed or whatever else are not really where I think we're changing the world yet. I think it was Jeff Hammerbacher from Cloudera had that great quote of the best minds of my generation are thinking about how to make people click ads, which sadly is still pretty true. But there are things that are happening that are making this better. And so it does lead back to the question a little bit for me around, so if we get, so we're going to change hats slightly here. I'm an MBA. Thinking about starting a company. I think AI is cool. Maybe I have enough of a programming background to be able to make sense of it enough, or at least I know how to go hire people.
That will be me so far.
Working out well. You start a venture fund. Where do you see opportunities for sort of entrepreneurs to go start looking now? I'll go to you first this time, MZ, since you're sitting next to me.
I mean, it's a really broad question. I think,
I feel like everyone's giving me a hard time about the questions here.
Like,
I'm not
like the thing is, the truth is, like, I feel like
have the same job as they do.
Yeah, I'd say
Why don't you answer?
Yeah, I already forgot the question. That's I also have the same short attention span.
Let's switch places. I mean, what are ripe areas? I guess. I think that's hard to answer specifically. I mean, my view is if I had a thesis so compelling, I would probably go start.
You go do it. Yeah.
Sector,
No, that's
right?
fair. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting point. So there's
Yeah.
nothing that's moved you so much where you're like, I have to do this yet.
I mean, I think, I would say like my interests are pretty diverse in terms of like the sectors I look at. So, I'd say like specifically for companies that want to like leverage some sort of automation or intelligence, I'd say, like there's probably a lot you can do in the manufacturing setting, right now. There's probably a lot sort of, say you're trying to, say you have a conveyor belt of fruit, right? And you're trying to do sort of picking and packing, and you want to do identification and sort of like doing some sort of like I want to see how much this box weighs. Like maybe there is some instrumentation for computer vision there. I
Yeah.
don't know, right? I think the thing is, if you're looking to solve a problem, hopefully you've had some domain expertise in that problem. That's helpful, right?
Yeah.
Or you've gone out and kind of like done the product, like, kind of gone out and sort of talked to sort of potential customers or sort of like landscape the sector and space to figure out like how big it is, what the TAM looks like, and why you think why your solution is, as one of my colleagues likes to say, is sort of a painkiller, not a vitamin. And so I think like there's just like loose principles. It's hard for me to kind of be like, this is like the thing you should go work on.
I'm just
right?
going to make one up then
Yeah.
for everybody to. No,
Yeah.
So basically, a little VC 101 there, right? Is like market feasibility, technical feasibility, TAM, domain expertise. Obviously, very important. It's tough to back somebody who has no idea about what they're about the subject matter that they're looking at. Is there anything that you're specifically thinking is a good area for someone to go attack?
I only look at it from the enterprise lens, but if you are looking at starting something that's more B2B, so businesses buying your product, make sure you do your homework around how much the customer is going to want this and pay for it. I think without it, there's a lot of passion areas that end up not leading to revenue, which can be a problem. So yeah, if the customer's like, I'm going to take my checkbook out right now, whatever that means right now, checkbook wise, but pay $500,000 or $250K or even $100K for contract right now. If you give this to me because I have searched and I haven't found anything else, that's your opportunity. And then hopefully you have expertise in there, or you find that you build the right team to round out and know the space well and things, all of the things they mentioned. But for me, don't build in dark.
And I think if you're going to build for your own passion, you should really, really want it. Like you yourself would be like sort of content on just using it yourself. Like if you never tried, like sort of in this notion of like, oh, solve your own problems. I agree with it, but you have to really, you can't trick yourself, right? Or at least you shouldn't be.
That's a good point. Yeah, don't trick yourself. That's a good one. May I make a Swiss fact? Do you know a little piece of Switzerland history circa 2007? Any idea what happened?
What?
So 2007.
2007.
2007.
Oh, 2007.
According to the internet, which never lies.
Very specific.
Switzerland accidentally invaded its neighbor Liechtenstein.
What?
I don't know. Is this true?
How did that happen?
It was a money thing? Is that what you said? Well, it was an accident. It's a small country, It's
All the money creeped in there from the underground.
yeah. Interestingly enough, speaking of money in Switzerland, there are more banks than dentists. One per
That's the opportunity
1,400
right
residents.
there.
It's an interesting point, actually.
Banks
yeah.
have bankers.
Banks, yeah.
Bankers have toothaches.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. Okay, great. So let us go back a little bit to the big data stuff. And for those of you who have no interest or hate it, too bad. A lot of big data has been built on Hadoop and the Hadoop ecosystem to date. We haven't seen anything really in the AI world yet take on that Hadoop-like role. Is that an opportunity? Is it just a missing link? Are we waiting for open source?
I mean, there's TensorFlow, and I think PyTorch has come out recently. I think PyTorch's actually, making strong headways. It seems pretty like legit. So, yeah. I mean, I would say it's hard to compare Hadoop and like just AI abstractly.
Yeah.
I think that's more So
The Hadoop
yeah.
ecosystem. That's all
Sure,
that's
sure.
what
The
I'm giving
ecosystem.
you.
Yeah.
So big data versus AI. Is it all? Do we not get AI without big data?
I mean, you can if you like, let's say you're leveraging Spark, right? Like, there's
Yes.
ways also to apply your own models on top of Spark and
Right.
sort of do data processing and data
Yeah, which is
cleansing,
what
data streaming. There's
right,
a ton
and
of
Storm
technologies
did all
out
that stuff,
yeah.
and then that became an Apache project.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing. So open source thus far, we haven't. There's nothing besides TensorFlow. I mean, TensorFlow is probably the biggest.
It probably has like a fair bit of mind share. I'd say PyTorch has been gaining a lot of headwinds. It's easy to debug. Like, sort of a lot of folks are supporting it, like Facebook supporting PyTorch, NYU, like CMU, Stanford. I think that's actually, like, when I talk to my friends in academia, PyTorch seems to be making a lot of sort of headwinds.
Yeah, everybody go look that up. PyTorch, figure that out. When we think about who's taking advantage of the big data revolution, so there are people like Amazon, such. Who else do you think about that have done a good job of really using data to either make more money or spend less or whatever else?
Google,
Google's a good one. Amazon. Who else?
Facebook.
So advertising. sort of advertising, Amazon.
I would say a lot of the car manufacturers are sort of entering that world
Yeah.
now too,
Yeah.
right? On the autonomous
Tesla
driving
is a good
side.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tesla's like
Yeah.
a great one. Yeah.
And who missed the boat on this, you think? IBM. Interesting. Because you think that Watson is not good, or they just missed it? But what about Watson? I feel like your logic is irrefutable. But you know, but IBM would be a most likely a tools vendor in that case. I mean, I'm thinking more of use case. I mean, so retail, for example, has not made great use in a lot of cases. You know, they were early to coupons, and then it all sort of stopped. Healthcare has a big interest, but it's tough to do. Are there other areas that we think would be good areas to go target with sort of data-oriented approaches or AI? Fraud.
Yeah, I can list every company I've invested in that's in different categories. So I don't think there's blanket categories that do and do not do this. I mean, I think data is used smartly in many ways behind the scenes. Like even the U.S. Post Office uses AI, what do you call AI, for image recognition. How do you think you get your mail so fast? They have really good systems that they've worked on for like many years now. So I think your question at this point is like, who does not use it?
Well, who does not use it effectively? Let's think of it that
Well,
way.
I think what's effective?
Well, Macy's. You know, they theoretically, or let's use Costco as you guys have Costco in.
But you don't know if they're using it in their supply chain or not. Why is everything
That's
so
fair.
cheap?
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of the question, your question's kind of like sort of originating from around sort of like the consumer lens of it. To your point, it could be used in a manufacturing setting. It could be used sort of in a warehouse setting, and we don't know that,
Yeah.
right? It could be more about sort of efficiency gains for that enterprise, right? Obviously, Amazon's sort of like best in class in this case, but there'll be folks that catch up, right?
Yeah.
And sort of on the retail front, Amazon's kind of exploring that. And you have folks trying to like the retail scenario is still, people are trying to figure out how to do omni-channel well, right? Like not everything needs sort of this notion of like, we're gonna automate everything away. Like that's kind of like a false sort of premise to start from. Almost like, I think it's almost like sort of like, it's very naive to go down that path almost.
I mean, actually, I have a few companies that are addressing retail commerce category. Like Placer is a company that looks at all the location geospatial data that you don't even know that they have, and then informs Walmarts and the Targets and so forth on, or the 49ers and so forth, like where do their customers come, where do they go before they were at the store, where should a mall have the right entrance because you might like not want to park and walk far. So they track all this movement data, and that's a company that's helping retail quite a bit. So again, that's not a retail company, but it's helping a lot of retail do well.
It's like them getting more efficacy
Exactly.
and analytics into sort of their end users or consumers. Yeah.
It's like me dragging these answers out of you after you both give me a hard time. I get it. Same thing. Oh, I'm kidding. It's how it goes.
It's all in the questions.
It's
I
all, how dare you? I feel like I need an MBA to write me up a proper.
We're just giving you a hard
Yeah,
time.
a
It's
form on
also-
this. Let's move on to a slightly different topic, which is the skills aspect of all this. Not so easy to find people who know how to do this stuff. How do you guys think about that? And how do you people in the audience? We'll take an audience question if we have one on. Anybody got anything? They'll answer anything. Yes, sir.
So, like right now, AI, machine learning are buzzwords, right?
Yes.
And many people don't really know what it means. So for your point of view, what really turns you off? Everybody's coming to you with AI, and so what are the red flags, like things you don't want to hear?
I mean, AI's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Like a very complicated, like symbolic logic.
my master's
is like AI, right? Or like really good sort of like rule-based systems AI, right? Machine learning is just a subset of that, right? So I don't know. I'd say like for me, like I would get excited about the application because then I can like sort of talk to a business or sort of like the end sort of customer or user and get sort of some notion of like there's someone still going to buy it. Someone's still going to have to procure it. Someone's still going to have to deploy it. There's no shortcut around that, right? And so I'd say like the application and can you get usage. So if you're a consumer product, like if you're like Masquerade and you can put funny faces on people's face, like that's great, right? And like that you can do it with like really strong accuracy and high efficacy, like that's interesting,
Yeah,
right?
it's cool. Yeah.
Like so.
So you guys don't want to hear about the technology, you want to hear about the business aspect of it.
So
It's both, right? Like because if someone's just like does a great job on sales and great job on sort of just getting sort of like dollars in the door. At some point, they have to deliver a great product, and a great product should leverage great technology, right? Because if you come up for renewal, no one's going to renew. So it's a balancing act.
And there's different ways to think about it. So you think of something like Mesosphere is a company, and it's a technology, right? And you pay for that technology. It's both. We're use case driven, so everything has to have a use case for us in order for it to even fit. So on some level, initially you sort of, I'm not gonna say you don't care what the technology is, as long as the use case makes sense, and then you sort of dig in and figure out what the technology is, and sometimes it's funny. Sometimes like I actually saw a Fortran thing not that long ago.
What did you see?
I feel like you're gonna make fun of me for being old again. It was an industrial application.
I was not making fun of you, by the way. I was just joking about terms
industrial
of it.
applications are an interesting area to look at as well for if anybody's in that space, because you start to see stuff that you literally will never see anywhere else. In terms of people wrote lots of operating systems and languages and all sorts of crazy stuff that will never compile again. But you still need that data, and so that aspect of it is really important. And so ultimately, whether or not it's AI or machine learning that gets me that data, I don't really care. All I care about is that you can solve that problem. We deal with a lot of things like oil and gas and aviation and stuff like that, and those are not systems that are designed to be particularly fluent in anything but what they do. And so, the result though is important, and that's a big opportunity. I mean, so for us from an investment point of view, like we look at all these things now, and we incubate a lot that are, for lack of a better term, data companies that.
But you guys sell like medical appliances, for instance, right?
So
if you're suddenly make medical imaging solution, like maybe there's a scenario where sort of you have a better way to sort of like do the service and maintenance of it, and there's a better way to sort of pull data from these devices, so like you can kind of blanket that in the IoT world. You pull the data, it gets sort of like cleaned, cleansed, it gets nurtured.
It's a big company.
I mean, and there's people who do that on top of ServiceNow.
Yeah,
right?
so ServiceNow is another way to. We had an MRI machine. The GE makes MRI machines. I don't know. And the chip turned out to be like this crucial part of the whole machine working. Turned out the chip was actually pretty awesome and could be used in all these different ways. We went out and we started a company. We raised a bunch of money. It's called Menlo Micro. It's an interesting sort of way to look at it. Like there are components of everything that's out there in the universe that can be augmented. We're obviously talking about AI and such, but it doesn't, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's AI, whether it's finance, lots and lots of opportunity.
And earlier, I think someone was asking more about the technology front, but like sort of say you're trying to do something on the edge, right? There's companies that want to build like a way for you to run more of these processes in an embedded fashion on the edge, right? So like how can you have like a low footprint of compute, but powerful enough to like run some of these algorithms on the edge? So like you have companies like Mythic AI, right? So there could be enabling technologies. I think some of it is more of like if you're just playing in the models game, it's like, oh, we're gonna have the fastest version of like, fastest model against ImageNet. Like at some point or another, like I think larger companies can just like brute force you there. And yeah, I'm just like personally less interested in that.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions?
To add to the long thread already though, I think of it like a four-legged stool. One is the big thing is what problem are you solving? So that's the main one, and here we identified so many already, like in the health and logistics, so many. So pick one. Second is when you say you're an AI company, what does that mean? Are you just using TensorFlow and building on top of it, and that's okay?
Anything wrong with doing that?
No, but there's nothing wrong. But the point, let me finish the third and the fourth, and then we can get to that. But the third piece is though, what unique data do you have to make TensorFlow better for your application or problem you're solving? And that's where it becomes interesting, because where we are, we do need data today. That is the innovation needed, like solve and make something that makes AI smarter with like really less data, and that will be good innovation. But in the meantime, that's the third leg of that stool, and the fourth leg is to really have some expertise of going and being able to sell this package thing and making money for it. So that's the way I look at this stool. Without that, you sit down on that stool and you can fall.
Yeah, I mean,
and no one laughed.
to your point, I think.
got it.
To your point, like the core fundamentals of like a business sort of like don't go away, right?
Yeah.
Like like it's not like some silver bullet. It's like like this,
Right.
like I've achieved sort of, I can break rules, right? Like the physics of like investing in a business and like why it should exist, the go-to-market, the timing, how you plan to do it still apply.
Right.
And the end buyer is still going to sort of perceive it that way. So that's why, like, I kind of, for me, it's like, it's this notion of like AI companies is just a weird way for me to digest it personally.
So,
Unless you are an AI company that is,
which could be.
which is
Yeah.
basically, if you are solving this problem where you tell me I don't need any data sets to be smart, tell me, come by and talk to me. I mean, that's an AI company.
And there are actually some interesting
Yeah.
AI companies being built.
Yeah.
They may sort of position themselves that way, but ultimately they kind of go after the use case, right? So it's like, okay, you're building an AI company. You might be horizontal in nature, but like, what's your first application?
Yeah.
And is the TAM big enough on that first application? And then what's the second stage rocket, kind of, right, from there? So, yeah.
So while you think about some questions, I'll give you another couple of Switzerland facts for our team here.
How much time did you spend on Wikipedia?
I had a lot. I had nothing to do all today. It's totally
He
fine.
has like a bot sitting
Most
there,
of,
just
most-
like
Yes.
spitting out
Oh, yeah.
spitting out sort of facts
most
about
of Venture
Switzerland.
is just sitting around. If you guys have
In the
ideas.
future, these jobs gonna be
It'll be a robot.
irrelevant.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
gonna be a bot.
Dare to dream. It already is
Spitting
irrelevant,
question.
as far as I know.
The moderator bot.
Switzerland, in fact, is one of the happiest countries, and yet it has a nearly 48.6% rate of divorce. Interesting.
Are you equating happiness and divorce?
I'm
with
not.
each
I'm
other?
asking. It's an interesting study, and maybe I don't know, and we need an algorithm to figure this out.
Like, are you saying the divorce rate in Bhutan is really low?
You know, I don't have Bhutan, but I will find out. I will. I'll look that one up. Also, okay, there's a very
If there
famous,
was a bot here, that would be able to answer that question very fast.
arguably
Alexa.
the most famous algorithm in the world was written in Switzerland.
Which one?
Well, I don't know. What would you consider one to be the most
Famous algorithm?
probably very very important. It was by
Bulbasaur?
Bulbasaur.
Means-
What about Einstein?
Like,
E equals MC squared.
oh, that one. I thought like
Yeah.
the Salesforce Einstein.
Yeah. So it goes to show you the bubble that we live in here, right? That
Hey, they make money.
there was this other Albert Einstein guy. There's another Menlo Park, if you guys didn't know this. It's in New Jersey, is where Edison actually was, and people are fascinated by that. Okay, so do we have any questions? We're at the 7:44 mark. Yes, please, bring it.
Yeah, so previously, like we had these people that to do AI stuff, you need a PhD who has been working on artificial intelligence and stuff like that, right?
Mhm.
But with TensorFlow, it looks like things have become much easier. You don't really need PhDs on your team to write an AI application. Is that a correct assumption?
Well, I mean, I think you have a lot of advantages that you didn't have a few years ago. But I want to use it. You're a PhD, aren't you, Shruti?
I'm not a PhD,
I'm a simple
but
MBA.
at the same time, yes and no. If you don't need a PhD to solve the problems you're
Yeah.
solving, you also don't need to call yourself an AI company, by the way. As I said, I'll keep coming back to like find a problem. If someone wants to really pay for that problem, if you solve it with AI or if you solve it with like something else, I don't care. I don't think investors are saying I'm just going to go after this because it's an AI company.
Yeah.
But they are saying this hasn't been solved before, and now because of AI, it's getting better and it's possible. That's why AI is a thing right now.
Yeah, I come from a big open source background, so for me, it's all these things make it easier for you to go build companies and build products that offer more value.
When you look at
Whatever.
the team, you don't want to see PhDs on the team.
I think the way to think about this is like
Sure.
if you look at what it was like to build a website or sort of
Yeah.
like a web service like 15 years ago, right? Sort of putting together sort of like a lamp stack and doing a bunch of the stuff was actually pretty painful. It was not trivial at all. Like likewise, building mobile apps was much harder like in 2008 than it is today. And sort of I have a fundamental view, and I think most people do, that it will get easier to sort of build companies that can take advantage of data, build, be AI-based companies, that sort of enabling technology will become sort of, in some sense or another, commoditized, right? Now, I mean, there might be specific applications of it where you might need someone with, like, say that you want to do entity extraction. Maybe having someone with a really
Yeah.
strong NLP background is useful in that situation.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the use case and the end application. And Facebook for a long time was like a sort of like a basic web service, right? And over time they added more of this like technical functionality within the company and layered it on. I think it's early on for me. It's like, how can you get to market? How can you get users? How can you acquire users? Whether it's enterprise, consumer, it's like, how do you solve those core problems?
Yeah. I think the point is that there was a good point that there is there are aspects that there's probably just not a lot of humans who know how to do it, and that's where that PhD or whatever else becomes pretty important. It doesn't matter whether the degree is there or not. Also, for better or worse, you see a lot of PhDs who are socially inept, and that's something to think about.
That's not true.
Oh, I see a lot of them.
I don't
work
know,
with
but
a
what's
lot
the
of them.
point?
Point is that you're saying, does it matter? No, it doesn't. None of it matters. All that matters is you can solve the problem, and you're going to make a great company, right? Anybody can be socially inept. It doesn't matter, right? It's all relative.
Next question.
I feel like I'm.
I just want the
We're
bot to work well.
validating the point of the social. I'm kidding.
I'm not a PhD. Thanks for thinking that, though.
I like to think that everybody's a PhD. Everything's awesome. Please.
So I was wondering, since the AI companies are all about data, what's preventing big ones like Facebook or anonymous PhDs to just kill these companies? So like entrepreneur who's starting an AI company, how should he try to differentiate himself or get into something that these guys do?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So how do you differentiate against these big guys who have all the money and everything else, right? So let's use some of the examples of you mentioned Facebook. There's Amazon. There's Apple, Google, Tesla. But you also let's think about Oracle, right? Oracle, you could argue, has all the developers too. Would you say Oracle is a cutting edge company that you're concerned about as a application developer?
Well, I mean, you don't usually associate Oracle with AI.
I know, but my point is, do you guys think it matters whether it's AI or something else? That there's always, is there an opportunity to go? Yeah, I think that my point is that you can go after go after everybody, right? This is what you do as an entrepreneur.
I think it depends on your differentiation. If there's, I think big companies like have some scale advantage. Like if say you wanted to go after, I don't know, a rich way to do like sort of like, say you want to offer some like NLP as a service, there's a chance GCP may offer that over time. AWS may offer that over time, right? So in some sense, it just depends on the application and use case after you're going. So there tends to be some biases with investors, not all of them, but where like this notion of like, oh, we're going to be a horizontal approach just doesn't work because there's existing platforms that can add that on in a much more efficient manner and just have the better efficacy around their models because they actually have a lot of the data sets already, and then they can kind of brute force it with the sort of like the great talent they have on their team. So it's sort of like it kind of depends on what you're trying to solve, right? It's just kind of hard to.
But that said, you should be fearless about it. That's my opinion.
Yes.
Right? I mean, do you disagree?
No, not at all. I think there's always someone else that can do something to MZ.
Yeah.
Its point, it's just, is that a focus area? Like Facebook today could do so many things with that data.
Exactly.
Do you think they're going to start a food business because now they know all these photos from your food preference? No. So if you're starting something, taking advantage of data in a food category, then don't think Facebook is a problem, right? Like anyway, I think it's more about like, I have all these resources, engineers, data scientists in my big company, but is that a priority business that I'm going to go make money from today? And that's, it's not always, the answer is not always yes. And even if the answer is yes, like how long will it take for them to reorient themselves to make that happen? So I don't think VCs tend to think about that from that perspective unless it's like a easy thing to add, like as MC was saying.
Yeah.
And it's like, then it becomes
Or it's on their like product. And even if it's on their product roadmap, maybe you out execute and then you out
Right.
distribute, right? You never know. I mean, the reality of it is most great companies are sort of the exception to the rule, and like things are fundamentally outliers. So we could be wrong about everything, right?
Yeah.
So like, I think at some point or another you have to just like recheck your own intuitions and talk to customers. If it's an enterprise company, if it's a consumer company, kind of be hyper focused on sort of growth and user acquisition, and are they happy, or and if the switching costs are too easy, maybe they'll switch. I don't know. There's like, yeah, it's more of like more fundamentally oriented around those things, right?
This time when the focus on data is so much, I wonder if these guys can, if startups design a commercially viable product, these guys can always beat you, right?
Well, it depends on what your product's doing, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe you should go after a data set that they don't have, or
Right.
don't have access to, right? Like I doubt Facebook has data on, I don't know, like sort of like, it's hard for me to come up with an
Industrial. They don't
example,
have
like on the industrial side, right? Like how oil and gas companies do sort of monitoring. They probably don't have data there. It just depends, right? Now, if you wanted to be like, I'm going to build the best like image classifier on earth, there's probably a chance you'll lose there because Google and Facebook have more data. So it just depends on sort of the market you're going after and the sector you're going after, right?
Yeah, so a good example of this is maybe autonomous vehicles, right? Tesla arguably has the most, but then what about Uber? And then what about Zoox and all these other guys? Can you buy all this stuff? How do you solve that problem in a different way? And, create your own competition. We have 10 minutes. We will gladly take another question. Please don't make me do any more Switzerland facts. I beg of you. No more questions? Okay, so,
A quick question.
yes, please.
What do you think, since AI and big data are so tightly connected, what do you think the growth in say, big data is going to affect the ease of doing AI and vice versa?
I think it's going to make it dramatically easier. Yeah, to get AI stuff. I mean, right now, the challenge, one of the big challenges is there's almost too much data, and you don't know what to do with it. But that's sort of like anything else. It's like there's a commodity, you will soak it up, right? And the tools will get better. So I'm a big believer in it.
I think it's also, there's more data, but it's, to my point earlier, is it clean data?
Yeah.
Is it accessible data? It's in different repositories. Who's putting it together? Who's normalizing it? All of that is a real issue. So there's room for a lot of companies in that category itself. And then how do you apply that new data set you're creating for something else? So yeah, I think that's a big area.
MZ, do you know what was invented in Switzerland in 1989?
I don't.
Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web.
Nice.
Yeah.
I should know that. I should
Yeah.
We're,
Now we
I should
run
know
yeah,
that.
we're
I
running.
should know
Oh,
that.
you
I'm
love-
I knew
embarrassed.
that.
Yeah, so you're a guy who loves
Embarrassed.
JavaScript too, and I feel
I
like
do.
that's
Well, actually, no, I hate JavaScript, but
Any more questions? Anybody? We have 5 more minutes here. Don't make me keep going. Yes,
I
please.
have a question on the consumer side and the data that Facebook's gathering. Is there any thought process that they have when they have any sense of what Salesforce has done with the company or how to kind of open source software for companies to come in and add on?
Will they create a? They did have it. So Facebook will Facebook do a platform of some kind, a data platform?
Salesforce, that's the success of how they, I guess, they came in and opened up to all these companies and come in and have other service companies on top delivering Salesforce.
Yeah. So will Facebook do that? I think they tried a developer platform a while back that was not data oriented though.
That's what it is. It's all the data.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, look, who knows what they're going to do, right? I mean, it's sort of like it.
How would you compare it to Google? I mean, so SEO is the next thing that you guys are supposed to do, right? When you optimize, where they kind of pull you in.
Or there, yes, SEO and those follow me ads and all that other kind of stuff. They make me sort of, which I will address about the Switzerland factoid about assisted suicide is acceptable. Those kinds of things make me almost suicidal to think about as both an investor and a human, SEO and all that other kind of stuff. So I'm going to let you guys address it because I truly despise all of it.
I'm an enterprise investor.
Yeah, but the thing is it's like, are you using the data for something that's great? It's great for them. Is it great for the rest of humanity? Who knows? I'm trying to become more zen in my old age, much like the Dalai Lama, who owns the smallest vineyard in the world, which
In
happens to be,
Switzerland?
yep,
What?
6.4 square miles.
Wait, what?
Yeah, 6.4 square miles. It has
Vineyard?
3 vines.
Why
Yeah.
wow.
Can
Yeah.
you tell us some backstory? I hope you clicked on those links.
I can't. Okay, so we are down to, we're a couple minutes here, 3 minutes. Any other questions? Otherwise,
I mean, that was an interesting fact.
That was
Everyone
actually
will learn.
interesting.
Yeah.
one more
I was, like,
question.
shocked.
Yeah, me too.
And then I'll ask a speed round for our panelists
3
here.
vines.
What company do you wish you worked for where you're not doing this?
Now, whoever pays me the most. I just kidding. I have no idea.
All right. And then is there a company that you wish you invested in? Not from a financial return perspective, but just because you truly think it's awesome?
Tesla.
Okay.
Too many.
Yeah.
Too many.
Are you guys familiar with Too Many? Just Google that. I'm kidding.
Cows.
I'm going to make the assumption that you both accept our AI robot overlords. Is that fair? No? Aliens? You accept aliens.
I do.
Jeez, what a-
I do.
This is the death march that I was afraid of. It was good. I'm kidding.
I also have seen UFOs.
Oh, good one. And then finally, Beatles or Led Zeppelin? You may be too young, both of you, for this.
I said Shakira already.
Yeah, so
I'd say Beatles.
I would, okay, Beatles or Zeppelin?
Beatles.
Okay, so I would have also accepted the Rolling Stones, and you're
All
both
good.
wrong.
All we
It's
all
Zeppelin.
need is love.
Good, we're done, so thanks, everybody.
Thank you.